SDG Bible study. That's the Soli Deo Gloria Bible study coming to you on this Tuesday morning, August the 4th, 2026. Hope everyone is well, up and about, and ready to read God's Word this morning as we continue reading from the reading plan As It Happened, a one-year chronological walk through the Bible, and also from Daily Doctrine, a one-year guide to systematic theology. This morning we'll be in the book of 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles, selected readings from there this morning. So join me as we read God's Word together. 2 Kings chapter 22. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Jedidah, the daughter of Adiah of Bozkath. And he did what was right in the sight of Yahweh, and walked in all the way of his father David, and did not turn aside to the right or to the left. Now it happened in the 18th year of King Josiah that the king sent Shaphan, the son of Azaliah, the son of Meshullam the scribe, to the house of Yahweh, saying, Go up to Hilkiah the high priest, that he may count the money brought into the house of Yahweh, which the doorkeepers have gathered from the people. And let them give it into the hand of those who do the work, who have the oversight of the house of Yahweh. And let them give it to those who do the work, who are in the house of Yahweh, to repair the damages of the house, to the craftsmen and the builders and the masons, and for buying timber and hewn stone to repair the house. Only no accounting shall be made with them for the money given into their hands, for they deal faithfully. Then Hilkiah the high priest said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of Yahweh. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. Then Shaphan the scribe came to the king, and responded to the king with a word, and said, Your servants have poured out the money that was found in the house, and have given it into the hand of those who do the work, who have the oversight of the house of Yahweh. Moreover, Shaphan the scribe told the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has given me a book. And Shaphan read it in the presence of the king. Now it happened that when the king heard the words of the book of the law, he tore his clothes. Then the king commanded Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam the son of Shaphan, Achbor the son of Micaiah, Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah the king's servant, saying, Go, inquire of Yahweh for me and the people and all Judah, concerning the words of the book that has been found. For great is the wrath of Yahweh, which is set aflame against us, because our fathers have not listened to the words of this book, to do according to all that is written concerning us. So Hilkiah the priest, Ahikam, Achbor, Shaphan, and Asaiah went to Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shallum, the son of Tikvah, the son of Harhas, keeper of the wardrobe. Now she lived in Jerusalem in the second quarter, and they spoke to her. And she said to them, Thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, Say to the man who sent you to me, Thus says Yahweh, Behold, I am bringing evil on this place and on its inhabitants, even all the words of the book which the king of Judah has read, because they have forsaken me and have burned incense to other gods, that they might provoke me to anger with all the work of their hands. Therefore my wrath has set aflame against this place, and it shall not be quenched. But to the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of Yahweh, thus you shall say to him, Thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, regarding the words which you have heard, because your heart was soft, and you humbled yourself before Yahweh when you heard what I spoke against this place and against its inhabitants, that they should become an object of horror and a curse, and you have torn your clothes and wept before me. I truly have heard you, declares Yahweh. Therefore, behold, I will gather you to your fathers, and you will be gathered to your grave in peace, so your eyes will not see all the evil which I will bring on this place. So they brought back the word to the king. 2 Kings chapter 23. Then the king sent, and they gathered to him all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem. And the king went up to the house of Yahweh, and all the men of Judah, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests and the prophets and all the people, both small and great, and he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant which we found in the house of Yahweh. Then the king stood by the pillar and cut a covenant before Yahweh to walk after Yahweh and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all his heart and his soul, to establish the words of this covenant that were written in this book. And all the people entered into the covenant. Then the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest and the priests of the second order and the doorkeepers to bring out of the temple of Yahweh all the vessels that were made for Baal, for Asherah, and for all the host of heaven. And he burned them outside Jerusalem in the fields of the Kidron and carried their ashes to Bethel. And he did away with the idolatrous priest whom the kings of Judah had appointed, who burned incense in the high places in the cities of Judah and in the surrounding area of Jerusalem, as well as those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the constellations, and to all the host of heaven. And he brought out the Asherah from the house of Yahweh outside Jerusalem to the brook Kidron, and burned it at the brook Kidron, and ground it to dust, and threw its dust on the graves of the common people. He also tore down the houses of the male cult prostitutes, which were in the house of Yahweh, where the women were weaving hangings for the Asherah. Then he brought all the priests from the cities of Judah and defiled the high places where the priests had burned incense, from Geba to Beersheba. And he tore down the high places of the gates, which were at the entrance of the gate of Joshua, the ruler of the city, which were on one's left at the city gate. Nevertheless, the priests of the high places did not go up to the altar of Yahweh in Jerusalem, but they ate unleavened bread among their brothers. He also defiled Topheth, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, that no man might make his son or his daughter pass through the fire for Moloch. And he did away with the horses which the kings of Judah had given to the sun at the entrance of the house of Yahweh by the chamber of Nathan Melech the official, which was in the precincts, and he burned the chariots of the sun with fire. Also the altars which were on the roof, the upper chamber of Ahaz, which the kings of Judah had made, and the altars which Manasseh had made in the two courts of the house of Yahweh, the king tore down, and he crushed them and threw their dust in the brook Kidron. And the high places which were before Jerusalem, which were on the right of the Mount of Destruction, which Solomon the king of Israel had built for Ashtoreth, the detestable idol of the Sidonians, and for Chemosh, the detestable idol of Moab, and for Milcom, the abomination of the sons of Ammon, the king defiled. And he broke in pieces the sacred pillars and cut down the Ashram and filled their places with human bones. Furthermore, the altar that was at Bethel in the high places which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, had made, even that altar in the high places he tore down. Then he demolished all the graves that were on the mountain, graves, and burned them on the altar, and defiled it according to the word of Yahweh, which the man of God proclaimed these things. Then he said, "What is this monument that I see?" And the men of the city told him, "It is the grave of the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things which you have done against the altar of Bethel." And he said, "Let him alone, let no one move his bones." So they left his bones undisturbed with the bones of the prophet who came from Samaria. And also all the houses of the high places which were in the cities of Samaria, which the kings of Israel had made provoking Yahweh to anger, Josiah removed, and he did to them just as he had done in Bethel. And all the priests of the high places who were there, he slaughtered on the altars and burned human bones on them. Then he returned to Jerusalem. Then the king commanded all the people, saying, "Celebrate the Passover to Yahweh your God, as it is written in this book of the covenant." For such a Passover had not been celebrated from the days of the judges who judged Israel, nor in all the days of the kings of Israel and of the kings of Judah. But in the 18th year of King Josiah, the Passover was celebrated to Yahweh in Jerusalem. Moreover, the mediums and the spiritists and the teraphim and the idols and all the detestable things that were seen in the land of Judah and in Jerusalem, Josiah purged in order that he might establish the words of the law, which were written in the book that Hilkiah the priest found in the house of Yahweh. And before him there was no king like him, who turned to Yahweh with all his heart and with all his soul and with all his might, according to all the law of Moses, nor did any like him arise after him. However, Yahweh did not turn from his great burning anger, his anger which burned against Judah, because of all the provocations with which Manasseh had provoked him to anger. And Yahweh said, I will remove Judah also from my presence, as I have removed Israel, and I will reject Jerusalem, this city which I have chosen, the house of which I said, my name shall be there. Now, the rest of the acts of Josiah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? In his days, Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up to the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates, and King Josiah went to meet him. And when Pharaoh Necho saw him, he put him to death at Megiddo. And his servants drove his body in a chariot from Megiddo and brought him to Jerusalem and buried him in his own tomb. Then the people of the land took Jehoahaz, the son of Josiah, and anointed him and made him king in place of his father. Ahaz was 23 years old when he became king, and he reigned 3 months in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that his fathers had done. And Pharaoh Necho imprisoned him at Riblah in the land of Hamath, that he might not reign in Jerusalem. And he imposed on the land a fine of 100 talents of silver and 1 talent of gold. Then Pharaoh Necho made Eliakim, the son of Josiah, king in the place of Josiah, his father, and changed his name to Jehoiakim. But he took Jehoahaz and brought him to Egypt, and he died there. So Jehoiakim gave the silver and gold to Pharaoh, but he taxed the land in order to give the money at the command of Pharaoh. He exacted the silver and gold from the people of the land, each according to his valuation, to give it to Pharaoh Necho. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he became king, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Zebediah, the daughter of Pedaiah of Rumah. And he did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh, according to all that his fathers had done. 2 Chronicles chapter 34. Josiah was 8 years old when he became king, and he reigned 31 years in Jerusalem. And he did what was right in the sight of Yahweh, and walked in the ways of his father David, and did not turn aside to the right or to the left. Now in the 8th year of his reign, while he was still a youth, he began to seek the God of his father David. And in the 12th year, he began to cleanse Judah and Jerusalem of the high places, the Asherim, the graven images, and the molten images. And they tore down the altars of the Baals in his presence, and the incense altars that were high above them he cut in pieces. Also the Asherim, the graven images, and the molten images he broke in pieces and ground to powder, and scattered it on the graves of those who had sacrificed to them. Then he burned the bones of the priests on their altars and cleansed Judah and Jerusalem. And in the cities of Manasseh, Ephraim, Simeon, even as far as Naphtali, in their surrounding ruins, he also tore down the altars and beat the Asherim and the graven images into powder, and cut in pieces all the incense altars throughout the land of Israel. Then he returned to Jerusalem. Now in the 18th year of his reign, when he had cleansed the land and the house, he sent Shaphan the son of Azaliah, and Maaseiah, an official of the city, and Joah the son of Joahaz, the recorder, to repair the house of Yahweh his God. And they came to Hilkiah the high priest, and gave him the money that was brought into the house of God, which the Levites, the Gork, had gathered from the hand of Manasseh and Ephraim, and from all the remnants of Israel, and from all Judah and Benjamin, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. Then they gave it into the hand of those who did the work, who had the oversight of the house of Yahweh, and those who did the work, who were doing this in the house of Yahweh, used it to restore and repair the house. They in turn gave it to the craftsmen and to the builders to buy hewn stone and timber for clamps, and to make beams for the houses which the kings of Judah had let go to ruin. And the men did the work faithfully with the foreman over them to direct, Jahath and Obadiah, the Levites of the sons of Merari, Zechariah, and Meshullam of the sons of the Kohathites, and the Levites, all who were skillful with musical instruments. They were also over those who carried loads, and directed all who did the work from service to service. and some of the Levites were scribes and officials and gatekeepers. When they were taking out the money which had been brought into the house of Yahweh, Hilkiah the priest found the book of the law of Yahweh given by the hand of Moses. So Hilkiah answered and said to Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of Yahweh. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan. Then Shaphan brought the book to the king and furthermore responded to the king with the words, saying, Everything that was given to the hand of your servants they are doing. They have also poured out the money that was found in the house of Yahweh and have given it into the hand of the supervisors and those who did the work. Moreover, Shaphan the scribe told the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest gave me a book, and Shaphan read from it in the presence of the king. Now it happened that when the king heard the words of the law, he tore his clothes. Then the king commanded Hilkiah, Ahikam the son of Shaphan, Abdon the son of Micah, Shaphan the scribe, and Asaiah the king's servant, saying, Go inquire of Yahweh for me and those who are left in Israel and in Judah concerning the words of the book which has been found. For great is the wrath of Yahweh which is poured out against us, because our fathers have not kept the word of Yahweh, to do according to all that is written in this book. So Hilkiah and those whom the king had told went to Huldah the prophetess, the wife of Shallum the son of Tokath, the son of Hazra, keeper of the wardrobe. Now she lived in Jerusalem in the second quarter. They spoke to her regarding this. And she said to them, Thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, say to the man who sent you to me, Thus says Yahweh, Behold, I am bringing evil on this place and on its inhabitants, even all the curses written in the book which they have read in the presence of the king of Judah. Because they have forsaken me and have burned incense to other gods, that they might provoke me to anger with all the works of their hands, therefore my wrath will be poured out against this place, and it shall not be quenched. But to the king of Judah, who sent you to inquire of Yahweh, thus you shall say to him, Thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, regarding the words which you have heard, because your heart was soft, and you humbled yourself before God when you heard his words against this place and against its inhabitants, and because you humbled yourself before me, tore your clothes, and wept before me, I truly have heard you, declares Yahweh. Behold, I will gather you to your fathers, and you will be gathered to your grave in peace. So your eyes will not see all the evil which I will bring on this place and on its inhabitants. So they brought back word to the king. Then the king sent and gathered all the elders of Judah and Jerusalem, and the king went up to the house of Yahweh, and all the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and the priests and the Levites and all the people, from the greatest to the least, and he read in their hearing all the words of the book of the covenant which was found in the house of Yahweh. Then the king stood in his place and cut a covenant before Yahweh to walk after Yahweh and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all his heart and with all his soul, to do the words of the covenant that were written in this book. Moreover, he made all who were present in Jerusalem and Benjamin to stand with him. So the inhabitants of Jerusalem did according to the covenant of God, the God of their fathers. And Josiah took away all the abominations from all the lands belonging to the sons of Israel, and made all who were present in Israel to serve Yahweh their God. Throughout his lifetime, they did not turn away from following Yahweh, the God of their fathers. 2 Chronicles chapter 35. Then Josiah celebrated the Passover to Yahweh in Jerusalem. They slaughtered the Passover animals on the 14th day of the first month. And he caused the priests to stand in their responsibilities and strengthened them in the service of the house of Yahweh. He also said to the Levites, who provided understanding to all Israel and who were holy to Yahweh, Put the holy ark in the house which Solomon the son of David, king of Israel, built. It will be a burden on your shoulders no longer. Now serve Yahweh your God and his people Israel. So prepare yourselves by your father's households in your divisions, according to the writing of David, king of Israel, and according to the writing of his son Solomon. Moreover, stand in the holy place according to the section of the father's households of your brothers, the lay people, and according to the Levites by division of a father's household. Now slaughter the Passover animals, sanctify yourselves, and prepare for your brothers to do according to the word of Yahweh by the hand of Moses. And Josiah contributed to the lay people, to all who were present, flocks of lambs and young goats, all for Passover offerings, numbering 30,000 plus 3,000 bulls. These were from the king's possessions. His officials also contributed a freewill offering to the people. The priests and the Levites, Hilkiah and Zechariah and Jehiel, the officers of the house of God, gave to the priests for the Passover offerings 2,600 from the flocks and 300 bulls. Conaniah also, and Shemaiah and Nethanel, his brothers, and Hashabiah and Jael and Jozabad, the officials of the Levites, contributed to the Levites for the Passover offerings 5,000 from the flocks and 500 bulls. So the service was prepared, and the priests stood at their stations, and the Levites by their divisions according to the king's commandment. And they slaughtered the Passover animals, and while the priests splashed the blood received from their hand, the Levites skinned them. Then they took away the portions for the burnt offerings, that they might give them to the sections of the fathers' households of the lay people to bring near to Yahweh, as it is written in the book of Moses. They did this also with the bulls. So they roasted the Passover animals on the fire according to the legal judgment, and they boiled the holy things in pots, in kettles, in pans, and carried them speedily to all the lay people. Afterwards they prepared for themselves and for the priests, because the priests, the sons of Aaron, were offering the burnt offerings and the fat until night. Therefore the Levites prepared for themselves and for the priests, the sons of Aaron. The singers, the son of Asaph, were also at their stations according to the commandment of David, Asaph, Heman, and Jeduthun, the king's seer. And the gatekeepers at each gate did not have to turn aside from their service, because the Levites, their brothers, prepared for them. So all the service of Yahweh was prepared on that day to celebrate the Passover, and to offer burnt offerings on the altar of Yahweh, according to the commandment of King Josiah. Thus the sons of Israel who were present celebrated the Passover at that time, and the feast of unleavened bread 7 days. And there had not been celebrated a Passover like it in Israel from the days of Samuel the prophet, nor had any of the kings of Israel celebrated such a Passover as Josiah celebrated with the priests, the Levites, all Judah and Israel who were present, and the inhabitants of Jerusalem. In the 18th year of his reign, the Passover was celebrated. After all this, when Josiah had set this house in order, Necho, king of Egypt, went up to make war at Carchemish on the Euphrates, and Josiah went out to meet him. But Necho sent messengers to him, saying, "What have I to do with you, O king of Judah? I am not coming against you today, but against the house which I am at war, and God has said for me to hurry. Stop for your own sakes from interfering with God who is with me, so that he will not bring you to ruin." However, Josiah would not turn away from him, but disguised himself in order to make war with him. Nor did he listen to the words of Necho from the mouth of God, but came to make war on the plain of Megiddo. Then the archers shot King Josiah, and the king said to his servants, "Take me away, for I am badly wounded." So his servants took him out of the chariot and drove him in the second chariot which he had, and brought him to Jerusalem, where he died, and he was buried in the tombs of his fathers. And all Judah and Jerusalem mourned for Josiah. Then Jeremiah chanted a lament for Josiah, and all the male and female singers speak about Josiah in their lamentations to this day. And they made them a statute in Israel. Behold, they are also written in the lamentations. Now the rest of the acts of Josiah and his deeds of loving kindness, according to what was written in the law of Yahweh, and his acts, first to last, behold, they are written in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. And that's going to conclude our reading from the biblical text this morning. Now let's move on to the reading from Daily Doctrine. Week 44, day 216, Sacraments. A sacrament is a holy ordinance instituted by Christ, wherein, by sensible signs, Christ and the benefits of the new covenant are represented, sealed, and applied to believers. the Westminster Shorter Catechism 92. If you want a simpler version, we should say that a sacrament is a sign and a seal of the covenant blessings we receive by faith. Or if you want something shorter still, we can go with Augustine's oft-cited definition. A sacrament is a visible sign of invisible grace. Let's work with the middle definition and focus on the words sign and seal. A sacrament is a sign. God gives us pictures for our benefit, not in replacement of the word, but as a complement to the spoken gospel. The word is adapted to the ear, and the sacraments are adapted to the eye. Some critics knock Protestant worship, especially Reformed worship, by saying God gave us all these senses, and the only one we use in worship is hearing. We listen to prayers and listen to music and listen to sermons and listen to scripture. What about the other senses God gave us? We need multimedia. We need art. We need video. We need drama. My response is, sure, let's have visuals in worship. Let's have more drama, but let's stick to the visuals and the drama that the Lord instituted. God gave us the sacraments as spiritual signs so that we can see, smell, taste, and touch the promises of the gospel. A sacrament is also a seal. Think about the purpose of an official seal, like a stamp from a notary public or the raised insignia on a legal document. A seal constitutes a formal engagement by two parties, an engagement where actions instead of words confirm the compact or covenant. When Jesus said, "This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood," Luke chapter 22, verse 20, he didn't mean that the cup itself was the covenant. He meant that by drinking the cup, the disciples participated and the new covenant would be authenticated. The language of signs and seals comes from Romans chapter 4, verse 11, where Paul describes circumcision as a sign of the covenant and a seal of the righteousness that Abraham had faith. As signs, the sacraments point to spiritual realities and divine promises. As seals, the sacraments presuppose a covenant transaction between God and the one who participates in the sacrament. In other words, sacraments are attestations and confirmations of God's grace, which, like the example of Abraham, are received by faith. Whether faith must be operative at the time of the sacrament's administration is a matter we will consider when we come to the chapter on infant baptism. The sacraments are overlooked and underappreciated in too many churches. Granted, we can ascribe too much significance to the sacraments, making them necessary for salvation or assuming the work like magical rites to the mere administration of the sign. And yet many of us are probably in danger of ascribing too little to baptism and the Lord's Supper. We do not expect much from the sacraments. We do not look for assurance, comfort, and strength. The God of all grace means to help us with these signs and seals, if only we would have the eyes of faith to see and believe. That's going to conclude our reading from the biblical text and Daily Doctrine this morning. As we read this morning from the biblical text in 2 Chronicles and 2 Kings, we see King Josiah, faithful king who loved God and who did right in his eyes. And he brought back, when he heard the reading of God's word, the reading of the book of the law, which had sat in dust for decades, when he read it, he was torn to the heart, tore his clothes, and immediately began to obey the words of that law and brought the people back to God, tearing down all the altars, and how quickly it turned when he died, when his son followed after false gods. And then we read about the sacraments this morning and how important it is to realize what God has given us. Hope you have a blessed day today. Hope you give God glory in it. And I hope I get this video out to you today. I don't know if I'm still going to have technical difficulties or not. We will see. Soli Deo Gloria.